I'm Matt McGrath, and this podcast is one of a series of 5 programmes from the BBC World Service called Inside the Paralympics, bringing you the stories behind the London 2012 Paralympic Games. Today, I'll be exploring the controversial issue of cheating, how some Paralympic athletes have gone to extraordinary lengths to edge their way onto the podium in pursuit of a medal, even if it means putting their lives at risk. You're with the BBC, I'm Matt McGrath, and in this edition of Inside the Paralympics, I'll be looking at the darker side of the Games, cheating. It's not just about the use of drugs in sport, but it's also about athletes who pretend to be more disabled than they really are. And we'll also examine the macabre practice of boosting the Paralympians who deliberately injure themselves in order to gain a competitive advantage. Well, I'm here at Stoke Mandeville Stadium, just an hour north of London, where Paralympians from several different countries are making their final preparations for the Games. I can see wheelchair athletes just whizzing round the track here in front of me right now. This year's Games will see over 4,000 competitors from more than 150 countries, a far cry from its humble beginnings. Just across the road I can see Britain's National Spinal Injury Centre that was set up here during the Second World War. It was here that the pioneering doctor Ludwig Guttmann helped organise the first disabled Games in 1948, when just 16 patients took part. Guttmann was one of the first to recognise that competitive sport was a critical element in rehabilitation.
You have people who are paralysed right up to the arms, you see, and not only paralysed in the legs, but also in the hand and the fingers. And yet they are able to compete in various sports. And sport is one of the most important part of the medical treatment.
In 1960, the first Paralympic Games took place in Rome with 400 athletes. And over the past 50 years, the Games have continued to grow to such an extent that now in London, the Paralympics is set to be a sellout for the first time. More than 2 million tickets have been sold, and there are likely to be huge audiences watching on TV all over the world. Martin McElhatton is the chief executive of Wheel Power, and he's a former Paralympian himself, competing in the wheelchair basketball for Great Britain in 1984, when the Games were last held here in Stoke Mandeville.
It's grown tremendously from those 16 athletes on the lawns of the hospital in 1948 to the 1,200 who took part in the 1984 Games when they were held here at Stoke Mandeville to the over 4,000 in London.
You were here in 1984. You were involved in lighting the flame in the cauldron, which is above us at this point. How have things changed for the athletes who are involved between the mid-80s and now? I mean, the pressures must be much more.
Well, I think the athletes are the same. You know, we were dedicated, we were professional in our attitude, but I think the pressure on the athletes, as you say, has increased tremendously, and the media attention. But it's also fantastic for them that they're going to be in the spotlight in London, performing in front of capacity crowds in wonderful venues as part of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, which is a huge celebration of people's achievement.
Indeed, so popular and high profile have the Paralympic Games now become that some countries are paying cash for medals. In others, successful competitors will be rewarded with new homes. That's obviously a big step up, and it's good to see the sports being taken seriously. But there are concerns that for some athletes, the greater rewards on offer mean greater temptation to take shortcuts, to cheat. Peter van de Vliet is the Chief Medical Officer for the International Paralympic Committee.
With an increased profile of Paralympic sport, there is an increased win or gain or loss by the athletes. And athletes will attempt to excel in performance and to eventually consider any other performance-enhancing means. Hence the need to increase and continue to increase, particularly out-of-competition testing, because that's the period where all means will be exhausted to achieve the goal.
Well, modern sport has for many years been tainted by the stain of performance-enhancing drugs, and the Paralympics is sadly no exception. Here at Stoke Mandeville, I can see lots of athletes working out in the gym, pumping iron, working on increasing their strength. And it's these strength sports that have been the main focus of doping in the Paralympic Games. In Sydney in 2000, of the 11 positive cases, 9 were in powerlifting. It's almost become part of the fabric of that particular event.
We do have one particular sport, which is powerlifting, where the use of substances is kind of part of the culture of the sport, that athletes do believe that without supplements they fail to be on equal standards as their opponents. Now, the use of supplements is something that is very difficult to control for, and nobody can guarantee what the content of these supplements are, what sits in there, and this is an issue in the sport of powerlifting.
In an effort to tackle the problem, the anti-doping authorities in London will test every single powerlifter ahead of the Games. In fact, this year will see the most powerful anti-doping effort in the history of the Paralympics. Over 1,250 samples will be taken and analysed in the same huge laboratory that handled the samples from the able-bodied events. But while there might be a temptation for some para-athletes to cheat using drugs, one powerful factor that limits their ability to do this is money. Nikki Emerson is a wheelchair athlete who races in both sprint and long-distance events. She spoke to me from Barbados, where she was competing.
There is probably more doping in the Olympics at the moment because the people have the money to do it. Whereas in the Paralympics, a lot of athletes aren't funded at all in some of the smaller sports. So realistically, even for those people who did want to dope, they wouldn't be able to. There just isn't the money to go about it, which, I mean, it's sad that there isn't the funding in the Paralympics in all sports just yet, but it's also, I think, quite good that it does prevent things like that.
But while the cost of drugs and the strict testing regime may limit the appeal of doping, there are other areas in which cheating in the Paralympics can and does occur. The wide-ranging nature of people's disabilities mean that careful classification is required to ensure fair competition. And because the classifying is done by human beings, it's open to some interpretation. Jane Buckley is a leading classifier in swimming. Speaking to the BBC after the Beijing Olympics, she said that some athletes tried to gain advantage by pretending to be more disabled than they really were.
The classic is that you get an athlete, firstly they'll hop on the bench and they appear to have some muscles functioning, and you ask them to move their legs and they won't move their legs for you. They hop in the pool and you ask them to kick and they say, how can I kick? I don't have any muscles to kick with. And then you watch them in competition and they'll do a 6-beat kick.
The Paralympic authorities are in a difficult spot when it comes to classification. There is a tension between ensuring people are competing fairly and the need to keep the number of classifications manageable. Too many classes devalues the achievements of Paralympians. Too few, and it makes it far more advantageous for those who would cheat and get into a different category. Dame Tanni Gray-Thompson is Britain's most decorated Paralympian with 16 medals.
Certainly in my sport of wheelchair racing, there used to be 3 classes. There are now 2. And there are people with complete neck injuries and incomplete neck injuries. And that's sort of quite difficult because if you're incomplete and you still have some movement, you can stand, you might still have a few little sort of stomach muscles that fire. That kind of gets a bit complicated. It's a bit like in mainstream sport where you have to kind of be lucky who your parents are. You can't make everything in Paralympic sport a complete level playing field.
While doping and classification cheating are issues across every aspect of the Paralympics, there is one form of extreme cheating confined to athletes with some types of spinal injuries that asks serious questions about the risks that people are willing to take and how effectively some sports are monitored. Athletes with spinal injuries cannot regulate their blood pressure and heart rate in the same way as other competitors. So during competition, their hearts don't respond to their body's demands. As a result, they often suffer from low blood pressure, fatigue and poor performance. So some athletes use a technique that's called boosting. This seeks to induce a common medical condition called autonomic dysreflexia. Because their spinal cords have been damaged, pain messages from below the site of their injuries can't get through to the brain. But their bodies respond by driving up adrenaline levels and critically increasing blood pressure and heart rates. Something as simple as a full bladder can provoke autonomic dysreflexia, but athletes seeking to trigger the condition can employ a range of techniques, from the simple over-tightening of straps to clamping a urinary catheter to twisting or sitting on the scrotum. And according to Gareth Davies, sports correspondent for the British newspaper The Daily Telegraph, boosting can also take more extreme forms.
Athletes cracking and breaking bones behind the scenes, sometimes with small hammers, where they'll break a toe to force the same kind of induction of adrenaline into the body. If they're, paralysed from the waist down, they break a toe deliberately in order to increase the adrenaline in the body.
What worries the authorities is the intentional triggering of the condition. And this is something of a dark secret in Paralympic sport, with very few athletes or coaches willing to talk about it. Brad Zdanivsky is a Canadian quadriplegic and blogger. He's not a Paralympic competitor, but he loves to climb mountains. And he has carried out boosting experiments on himself to see if he can improve his performances in training. I spoke to him via Skype from Vancouver.
So I actually tried several different ways of doing it. So what you can do is you can allow your bladder to fill, just basically, don't go to the bathroom for a couple hours and let that pain from your bladder do it. And some people do that, in sports by clipping off a catheter or something just to let the bladder fill. That's the easiest and the most common because you can quickly get rid of that pain stimulus by just letting that urine drain out. But I took it a notch further and actually used more of electrical stimulation to, my leg, my toe, or even my testicles.
Brad has tried to develop a systematic way of monitoring his own boosting to see if it can be controlled and tuned. He says that from his experience, that proved impossible to do, and he believes boosting is an extremely dangerous practice.
It's quite unpleasant. I mean, it's dangerous for a reason. You're getting a blood pressure spike that, could quite easily, blow a vessel behind your eye, or it could cause a stroke in your brain. It can actually even stop your heart. So it's very unpleasant, but the results are hard to deny. So, everybody will go after it if they really, the saying is winners always want the ball. So it doesn't matter if it's unpleasant. It gets results.
The Paralympic authorities have known about the technique for a long time. It was in fact banned by the IPC back in 1994. Some efforts were made at the Beijing Games to monitor the blood pressure of athletes before competition in an effort to detect boosting, but only around 20 or so checks were made. Subsequent surveys of athletes indicated that around 15% used boosting during competition, but some experts say the true incidence of boosting is much higher, around 30% of competitors. Dr. Andrei Krasyukov is an associate professor at the University of British Columbia in Canada and a long-time researcher into spinal injuries. He will be in attendance at the London Games to monitor quadriplegic competitors. He says that those with higher-level spinal injuries are the ones most likely to boost.
There is an interesting study done by actually one of my Canadian colleagues during the Beijing Paralympic study. The higher level of cervical injury, the highest percentage of people, Paralympians, will self-induce boosting.
Would you expect that at the London Paralympic Games that a similar level, about 30% of these particular spinal injury patients would be boosting?
Correct.
But while it might appear to be a simple case of cheating, according to some researchers, inducing autonomic dysreflexia is a response to a very unfair situation. When the IPC classify athletes, they look at the nature of the disability, but they don't take physiological factors like blood pressure into account. According to Dr. Andrei Krasyukov, athletes boost to make things fairer, and in his view, it is not cheating.
There is still disadvantages between Paralympic athletes who do have normal arterial blood pressure and who don't. And this put a significant number of athletes at disadvantage.
Are you saying that the athletes who who induce autonomic dysreflexia in themselves are doing it to level the playing field, or are they doing it to cheat?
My feeling, they are not cheating.
But these arguments about blood pressure don't convince Dame Tanni Gray-Thompson. As far as she's concerned, boosting is cheating, pure and simple.
It's really important that we talk about it because it needs to be stopped, because when it's done deliberately, when somebody causes a pain or shock to their body to induce autonomic dysreflexia, that is cheating. That is very different from when it occurs naturally. But I think any form of cheating in Paralympic sport needs to be eradicated.
Whether it's cheating or not, among scientists involved in Paralympic sport, there is an ongoing debate about how to curb boosting. Some, like Dr. Krasyukov, say that boosting happens because the classification system doesn't take account of blood pressure and other physiological parameters. If they did, he says, boosting would stop. I put these points to the Chief Medical Officer of the IPC, Dr. Peter van de Vliet.
I understand that perspective. However, Paralympic classification system is not considering any physiological characteristics at the moment. Paralympic classification on athletes with physical impairment is on the basis of a neuromusculoskeletal impairment rather than a physiological one.
But you can understand then in that respect, if there is no taking into account of physiological differences, of blood pressure differences, that some athletes might feel that boosting was right because it would make the competition fairer.
Well, we do not agree with that reasoning to the extent that when an athlete voluntarily induces a state of autonomic dysreflexia, and I stress the voluntary induction of it, then the athlete puts his own safety, its own health and safety at risk. That, of course, is something that the movement cannot accept. Therefore, that is not to be considered a levelling field of play.
Brad Zdanivsky doesn't believe that changing classifications will work to curb the practice of intentional self-harm among spinal injury athletes. There are simply too many variables, and it would require almost continual monitoring of competitors to know if they were cheating or if the autonomic dysreflexia was happening naturally. He would like a more open discussion of the problem, but he fears it will take a serious incident to bring boosting out into the open.
It's an ugly can of worms. No one really wants to open it and talk about it because there is no real solution. There's no way to definitively say that person is cheating, It's like throwing gasoline into a fire, If it's too much, you're dead. If it's too little, it doesn't do anything. So it's not going to go away. One day someone's just going to, someone's going to die right on the court, and then they're going to have to talk about it.
Back here at Stoke Mandeville, I can see athletes from the United Arab Emirates and from Saudi Arabia practicing their throwing for some of the events during the Games. And the London Games will undoubtedly be a celebration of all that is good in the Paralympic movement. Most athletes will be competing cleanly, and a huge majority, possibly more than in the able-bodied games, will adhere to the principle that taking part is as important as winning. But some will go further, and spinal injuries athletes will boost, either because they are looking to level the playing field or because they want to cheat to win. Standing here near the statue of Dr. Ludwig Guttmann, the man who is in many ways the father of the Paralympic movement, you can't help but feel that he'd be extremely upset to learn that some athletes were willing to risk strokes or even death in the pursuit of medals. That's a very big price to pay for Olympic glory. I'm Matt McGrath, and this podcast is one of 5 programmes inside the Paralympics from the BBC World Service, bringing you the stories behind the London 2012 Paralympic Games. Download the rest of the series from bbcworldservice.com/podcasts and find out how athletes with intellectual disability have been allowed back inside the Paralympic fold. Discover how technology is helping athletes go for gold. Hear the inside story on how Ukraine's success in the Beijing Paralympic Games changed attitudes to disability. And find out about the Olympic sport of wheelchair rugby, nicknamed Murder Ball. We spotlight the Canadian team.